Welcome to The Good Rod. I'm James Beastie, and I'm here today to present an honest, objective review of the Amplid Time Machine, a board that's replacing the Safari and looks similar to the Safari and has some similarities, but it's less directional, it has more of a centered ride, it has different sizing, and this board, while it's not going to float anywhere near as well as the Safari did, and I thought the Safari wasn't the best floater in comparison to some of its peers, this is such a fun board on groomers. This was one of the highlights of my turning this season. I love the way this pops, but yet still feels incredibly damp. The base isn't bad, the edge hold is good, and the overall turning experience is just exceptional. And that's what really lit it up with this board. So while you lose some powder, I like the turning on this even better than the Safari. Now I rode this primarily with my Nitro Team TLS boots and my Union Force bindings. I got this late spring in some really good conditions, but absent of any real powder. This happens sometimes. I was hoping to try these boards midwinter, but Amplid and I both got busy, and by the time they got the boards out to me, it was too late. And this is an honest, objective review for you, the consumer, and we can do that thanks to our sponsor, Blower Board Shop, a family-owned shop that's been selling snowboard gear longer than a lot of you have been alive that are watching these reviews. So if you want to support a brand with a large online presence, good pricing, great customer service, click through our links to Blower Board Shop and buy something there. We'd greatly appreciate it. Now let's talk sizing. This 155 fit me really well despite being a little heavy for its recommended weight. I would say though that recommended weight is often just a general guideline, and I'm always trying to find a balance between my boot size, my weight, and my height. This was the best balance. I didn't boot out with my size 9s on this 55. The turn initiation was great in all conditions, but I would love the 60 if I was more about going fast, bigger carves, wide open terrain, and I saw less uneven snow than I do. That board could work perfectly for me too. It's just going to turn a little slower and be a little harder to manage for my size 9 boots. Now, when it comes to shape, this is a tapered directional board, but it only has 3 mil of taper. It's got a more centered stance on board with only 10 millimeters back on side cut. And on the reference stance here, it's only 1.5 inches back from center of board with a 21.25 inch stance width. If you want to set it all the way back, let's say for a powder day, or just a more directional feeling ride, you can only get 2.375 inches back from center of board, again at a 21.25 inch stance width. So for a board of this shape, there is very little setback on board and on side cut. All right, let's talk camber profile here. We have a mellow camber. It doesn't feel super technical, but it's a little more on the technical side. I would say committed intermediates can go for it, but you're probably going to catch an edge here and there. But I would say for most people, this is an advanced expert snowboard, but you can skid your turns pretty easy if you size it right when you get off your game. It tracks super well, one footing, flat basing, all that jazz. One thing to point out is this doesn't have that lifted tech like the Safari did in the sides here, but it does have a unique curve up that starts mellow and then really starts to tweak up at the top in the nose. Now, when it comes to edge hold, I'm not seeing any real disruption in the side cut, but whatever they did with the way they shaped the radius of this side cut and whatever technology they're using inside the core, to help this edge get more leverage into the snow is pretty good. I rode this on a lot of firm but fun days, and I felt it had more than competent grip. This anti-phase dampening technology seems to really help keep the edge more quiet than you would think for how light and poppy this is. Let's talk Time Machine Flex here. Ooh. It's not as stiff as you would think. I would say it's almost on the medium side. And there is a good bit of pop here. And I just love the energy with this board. Down by the tail, it's pretty stiff as you'd expect. And then the nose is not as soft as you would think, but it's definitely softer than the tail. And there's a little more break in the flex in the middle of the board. So that's where you get your flex. There's a little easier twist edge to edge, and it makes it easier to twist torsionally and engage in turns. So I found that this was pretty easy to butter in the nose and tail. And when it comes to pop, even though this has a mellow camber, the construction under the hood here allows for a lot of pop, and it was very easy for me to ollie with this board, and it tracked really well into side hits. It never felt awkward for me, launched off them well, and landed well. Lots of tail here. You're very centered on the board, so it's a great board for those of you who like to get air around the mountain. And it can land, switch, and ride pretty well. There's not a lot of rise and kink up in the tail, but you're very centered on board, and I found myself riding this switch a little more than I thought I would. It's still not amazing, but it's a lot better than the Safari in that aspect. And when it comes to uneven snow performance, that's one of the reasons why you get Amplid with their centrifugal series, and their singular boards have a similar dampening technology, but not the same. This anti-phase technology is legit. They're just putting in these dampening properties that really reduce nose and tail chatter in that area where there's a little bit of early rise. It feels light, it feels poppy, but not chattery. That's an amazing thing. I wish more boards did that. And as you know here, I don't like getting too much into the tech. It's more about how it rides, because so much of that tech can be smoke and mirrors or marketing bullshit. But this has truly legit properties that I can feel on snow, especially when I do same-day comparisons to other boards like I did with this. For example, I compared this against the K2 Excavator, the K2 Almanac, the Stranda Biru. All are a little shorter, a little wider, but this just out-dampened them by a lot. And when I compared this against other boards in the Future Shapes line, like the Kill Switch, the Ohana Vibes, the Mood Bender, this was just so much damper when I got off those and got on this. So I really like how this handles all kinds of uneven snow, everything from hard to micro bumpy, on up to soft, thick, uneven, messy snow. You're never gonna have a bad day with this. Yeah, it will still buck and bounce around a little bit for what this flex is, but in comparison to almost any other board with this same flex personality and pop, they're gonna buck and bounce around a lot more. Now, when it comes to turning, this initiated a turn really quickly for me because it was matched up really well for my size 9 boots. It's not the kind of board I'd like in the trees because I don't like a lot of tail behind me when I'm turning in uneven snow in the trees, which is mostly what you see there. You rarely get perfectly untracked snow in the trees. So not perfect there, but in terms of initiation, it was medium fast for sure. Maybe almost bordering on fast, and I just love that feeling. And when I got it on edge and committed to a harder turn, I really loved the way this held through a carve and popped me out of it and set me up for the next turn. I always felt in control, but I never felt like I could find its speed limit and carve limit And speaking of, I just love this side cut and this centered feel. I felt like I could front foot, center foot, or back foot weight my turns any way I'd like. And the turning radius that came with this was really fun. It's on the turny side of balanced, so circle carves were fun. Across the groomer carves, really fun. That was my favorite part. And then medium radius turns and carves were really fun too. But I really liked how I could make longer, drawn out, down the line turns without this side cut fighting me. And if I wanted to straight line it and pick up some real speed and point it, I was amazed at how fast this little 155 could go. I mean, the 160 would be to the point where I'd have to make speed checks a lot when I was turning and picking up a lot of speed. But if that's what you're into, then yeah, you could size up and go 160 and have a blast. For me, this was all I needed. This was well beyond my ability level and insurance policy could handle. So really fun turner and really good going straight for this kind of side cut. Now, when it comes to base glide, never a fan of die cut, but they did it really well. I can barely feel it, so not bad. The base is pretty fast, upper end, but not the fastest of fast. And when well waxed, it's gonna keep its speed and do a great job. I had no issues with the base. There are faster out there, and that would be nice to have. It's not a slouch in any way, shape, or form. Now, when it comes to powder, this isn't the board I want to be on in powder. This isn't my style. This isn't what I'm about. I love to set my stance back as far as I can and get the easiest directional float that I can. This has less setback on board than some all mountain boards, and it's just not the kind of board I personally want to ride in powder. Now, if you like a centered feel on your board and you ride a lot of steeper terrain and you love getting big air and you want to be centered on board to have a lot of landing gear, this could work for you. If you're like me, you might want to have a different board for a powder day. So overall, I absolutely loved the Time Machine. Despite the fact that it isn't the kind of board I want to ride in powder, it's still the kind of board I want to ride in all other conditions. This is just such a fun, smooth, consistent performer that really just tickled my taint when it came to riding good groomers, firm but fair groomers. This was just so much fun. It's a board I'd love to have in my quiver. And while I do miss the more set back directional aspects of the Safari, it's fun to have this more centered directional ride as well.